6th, 1958. Munich Airport, West Germany. A British pilot prepares to bring home an extraordinary group of passengers. The Manchester United football team. In the 1950s, they are the most famous sportsmen on the planet.
Everyone in the huge Wembley crowd, from the Queen to the oldest fan, is tense with excitement.
Manchester United is probably the most premier team, most famous team this country had ever seen before.
I joined the club in December of '57.
Harry Gregg is the team's star goalkeeper.
We boarded the aircraft, which was a charter flight. We were really big time.
After playing a key game in Yugoslavia, the team has advanced to the semi-final of the prestigious European Cup.
The aircraft had to stop in Munich because it didn't have sufficient range to get back to Manchester from Belgrade without stopping to refuel.
The 21 players and staff are travelling in style. They're aboard a British European Airways Airspeed Ambassador. It's a luxurious twin-engine aircraft, also known as the Elizabethan. The captain is 36-year-old James Thane. He's a former RAF pilot with an impeccable service record.
He was quite a remarkable man. He was very upright and honourable, very strong character.
The weather had been pretty grim throughout the day. Snowfall in the morning gave way to a rising of temperature to just above freezing.
As Captain Thane finishes his pre-flight inspection, the young sportsmen settle in for the journey home.
They were notable for the fact that their manager, Matt Busby,
I like the lads to get a good night's sleep.
was picking relatively young players in the team, and that's why they were known as the Busby Babes.
Busby's Babes start the second half in cracking form with that slippery winger, David.
We're a young and wonderful team, which I'm very proud to have been part of.
I'll give you guys a chance to get your money back once we're in the air, boys, all right?
Travelling with the team are 11 of the UK's best-known sports journalists, eager to report on Manchester United's latest success. Also on board are a few Yugoslavians catching a ride to the UK. 38 passengers in all.
How's she looking out there?
Oh, snow build-up's minimal. No need to sweep. Take us home.
Happily.
38-year-old co-pilot Kenneth Raymond is a World War II ace. He is also an Elizabethan captain and is in fact senior to Thane at the airline.
They were both highly experienced pilots. You could really not expect to have a better crew flying that Manchester United team.
They were great friends, and of course they were captains together, and they flew together quite often.
Raymond and Thane have agreed that on this flight, they will switch seats.
Because Captain Raymond was going to be handling the aircraft, and he would be used to handling the aircraft from the left-hand seat, that's why he sat in the left-hand seat.
Port and starboard fuel cocks on, crossfeed off.
It's against company policy, which states the commander should always sit in the left seat. But it's a rule that is frequently broken.
1 inch open. Throttles, port and starboard, levers, 1 inch open. Carb air, port and starboard ram. Carb air, port and starboard ram. Ignition boost switches off. Ignition boost switches off. Unit 609, Zulu uniform. I am ready to take off.
Beeline 609, your clearance expires at 31. Time now is 30. Cleared for takeoff. Right turn out.
Thank you. Rolling.
In light snow, with the temperature hovering around freezing, Thane and Raymond start their takeoff run.
Full power. Full power.
I'd been reading a book that one of the lads had passed to me. I was reading that, and we sat off down the runway, and I looked out the window. No big deal at all.
Temperatures and pressures okay. 90. 100. Takeoff speed is 119 knots.
Abandon takeoff.
All of a sudden, I watched the wheels lock and unlock, and the plane started to spin. We stopped, slightly side on.
Sorry about that. Engine fluctuating.
609, we are abandoning the takeoff.
Tower, please say again.
We are abandoning the takeoff. May we backtrack? Over.
Engine boosting. I would think so, yes.
The problem was with boost surging, it happened with that particular engine on that particular aircraft. It was Bristol Centaurus engine. It was prone to doing this, especially at airports which are at high altitudes. And one of the problems was that the thrust sometimes was opened too fast.
609, clear to backtrack.
The Elizabethan taxis back to the start of the runway for a second takeoff attempt.
I truthfully can say I was not too perturbed at all. Another adventure for a young man, and I was not a bad flyer at that time.
Munich 609, Zulu uniform. When we get to the end of the runway, I should like to take off again. Is the clearance still valid?
609, your clearance is still valid.
Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize, but we are heading back to try again.
Back to the beginning. Sat, revved up as one would do, revved, and they took the anchors off, and I paid more attention this time.
Slightly further along the runway, the same thing happened again.
What is off the clock?
This time it was Thane who actually abandoned that takeoff.
And again, when I thought we were about to lift, I watched the wheels lock and unlock, lock and unlock. Got to stop.
The Munich 609's Zulu uniform. We are abandoning this takeoff as well.
Roger. Clear to backtrack.
And the pilot came on and said,
Sorry for that. We have a technical fault that we're now looking into. We're returning to the terminal for further checks. Nothing to be alarmed about, and we
Hope to have you airborne shortly.
Don't stray too far, boys.
we'd return to the terminal and everybody would disembark.
Bill Black, the station engineer, has seen these two aborted takeoffs and obviously clattered up the steps, put his head through the cockpit and says, well, what's going on? Why haven't you taken off?
We've been getting a boost surge in the port engine. Up past 60 last time.
They received an explanation that this was a fairly common phenomenon when operating the Elizabethan from Munich because of the high altitude, that it was nothing to worry about, and they were given advice when advancing the throttles, if they got the surging, was to just retard the surging engine slightly, reduce power, and then take it up again to full power more slowly.
Passengers for BEA 609, please proceed to the tarmac.
Within 5 minutes of the passengers being offloaded, they were loaded on again. And then there was a surprise to them. They've had two aborted takeoffs, and now they has to go back again.
If one person had said, this is crazy, we're not going, he would have had a whole lot of followers. But there you are, human nature again. Who's got the moral courage? But who likes to admit to being a coward?
Dacă vrei să faci o super mașină și mai super, păi N-ai reguli.
I absolutely love supercars.
But I want to make the first Rolls-Royce drift car.
N-ai scuze.
Only got 3 weeks to do that. Yeah.
Și n-ai limite.
We spent 1.3 million.
Is there any way we could build a gun case and the boot? I want one.
Supermașini reinventate. Premiera 16 februarie pe National Geographic.
Hans alege o bucată savuroasă de carne. Klaus o fărâmițează cu mare pricepere. Jürgen o potrivește meticulos cu alese condimente. Ludwig îi dă mai apoi forma potrivită. Johann se gândește de 2 ori înainte să taie odată. Herr Martin pune rețeta la taină ca să vă ofere în continuare salamul săsesc de la Cristim, un produs pe gustul românilor. Salam săsesc. Doar 6 sași de la Cristim știu rețeta originală. Cristim, știi ce-i bun pentru familia ta?
Acum. Design cu atitudine. Mazda CX-5 cu tracțiune integrală cadou.
Mazda. Haide!
Totul pentru Max!
Maxim de zimțat, maxim de crocant, maxim de gustos. Lay's Max. Încearcă gustul în formă maximă.
Ani de cercetare de laborator și studii clinice au dovedit că uleiul de krill ajută la scăderea colesterolului, trigliceridelor și a riscului de afecțiuni cardiovasculare, fiind de 40 de ori mai eficient decât Omega Classic. Coril reduce colesterolul și trigliceridele. Acesta este un supliment alimentar. Citiți cu atenție prospectul.
Când ești un bărbat așa cum trebuie, nu tu alegi gustul puternic și amărui, ci gustul puternic și amărui te alege pe tine.
Adică sticla asta m-a ales pe mine să o desfac?
Exact.
Și pe mine m-a ales paharul ăsta să-l țin în mână?
Fix pe tine. Dar tu ce faci?
Pe mine cred că se bat astea două.
Neumarkt. Gustul puternic și amărui pentru bărbați cum trebuie.
If it's necessary to take by force, take by force.
Încă un sezon pe baricade. Descifrăm ce poate fi în mintea infractorilor. Ești martor la războiul pentru lege.
We cannot tolerate it. We cannot let gangs make people afraid to go out at night.
Totul se plătește până la capăt. Piața neagră. În fiecare vineri noapte la 11 pe National Geographic. BEA Flight 609 prepares for its third takeoff attempt from Munich Airport. The plane carrying the Manchester United Football Club is drawing attention from inside the terminal.
You've got to remember these are the Busby babes. They're laughing and joking all the time, that sort of thing. But now they're quite quiet and there's a lot of tension there in the air.
Little Johnny Berry, he said, we're all going to get frickin' killed here. And Liam Whalen said, well, if it happens, I'm ready. At that point, I opened my tie.
Ignition boost switches off. Ignition boost switches off. And wings still look good. No need to de-ice. Munich Tower, Beeline 609 Zulu. Uniform, I'm ready to taxi, over.
Beeline 609, your clearance void, if not airborne, by 04, time now 02.
Roger, understand. Valid till 04.
Captain Thane has just 2 minutes before the window for takeoff closes. If this third attempt is not successful, the flight may be cancelled and his famous passengers will be grounded in Munich.
Munich 609 Zulu uniform is ready for takeoff.
Roger.
The runway is more than 1,900 meters long. Even with their plan for a gradual acceleration, the Elizabethan should be able to lift off just past 1,200 meters.
So for the third time that day, they actually lined up the aircraft with a centre line, got the permission, clearance to take off, and they're away.
Full power. Full power. Temperatures and pressures okay. Port surging slightly.
He experienced a bit of this engine surging, which he retarded the throttle slightly and then advanced it again.
Full power again.
Both engines sound an even note, and we're going down the runway now for a takeoff. Everything seems okay.
The pilots know what they're doing, boys.
I thought there's more people in this plane more frightened than what I am.
V1.
Velocity 1 is the speed at which a takeoff cannot safely be abandoned. The point of no return.
Raymond now is waiting, is anticipating now thing to call out 119 knots, which is V2.
At 119 knots, the plane can become airborne. But something goes wrong. They suddenly lose speed.
Christ, we're not going to make it!
There was no screaming, there was no shouting, there was nothing like that at all. Darkness and daylight and sparks and thumps, smacks. You can't describe it. And then it was just complete and total darkness. I thought it was dead.
The Elizabethan has crashed through a fence, hitting a house and a fuel shed 300 meters beyond the end of the runway.
And eventually I got to my senses and I started to crawl uphill. And I got to the hole of what was left of the aircraft. And I honestly thought, I don't want to lie here. And then I heard a shout,
Out! Everyone out! Now! It's going to explode! Out! Everyone!
He shouted, Run, you stupid bastard, it's going to explode.
Now! The plane could explode! Come on! Go, 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 go! Run, you stupid bastard! It's going
And
to
I
explode!
heard a child crying. I shouted, Come back.
Come back, you bastards! There's people alive in there!
I went back in through the hole I came out of, and I found the little child. Went round the other side and found Matt Busby, the boss.
Busby's alive, but in shock.
He had a small cut behind his right ear, I remembered, but when I looked down, his foot was completely reversed round the other way.
Oh, my leg!
I jammed some rubbish up behind him because he didn't look too bad and left him propped up.
Harry Gregg pulls out one passenger after another, both living and dead.
A man must do what a man must do.
Within minutes of the crash, help begins to arrive from the airport and nearby farms.
The co-pilot! He's trapped up there! Can you help him? Yes.
Two German rescuers climb up on the wing and free Kenneth Raymond from the wreckage. He is badly injured. 21 people are dead. 7 are Manchester United players. The head coach, secretary, and trainer are also dead. 7 more team members are seriously injured. Manager Matt Busby is in critical condition. Manchester United, one of the world's greatest football teams, is effectively wiped out.
What started out as a wonderful thing, sadly went wrong.
Near Munich, a fierce blaze marks the wreck of a British airliner. In attempting to...
We had this pretty high-profile air disaster here. The stakes are quite high. Not long after the end of the Second World War, we got two pilots who fly in the aircraft who actually flew in the RAF during the war. Yeah, and Munich, obviously, as well, was that place where the cradle of the Nazi Party. So you've got the British government, you've got the German government. Everybody was going to tread warily.
At 10 p.m. on February the 6th, 6 hours after the crash, the man assigned to investigate it arrives on the scene.
Hans Reichel was the West German chief accident investigator. He was quite experienced. He was 57 years of age. He'd flown with the Luftwaffe. He'd flown with Lufthansa, the national airline, so there's no doubt he was actually a qualified pilot.
This was the first major international accident that he had had to deal with.
In his role as air crash investigator, Steve Moss is re-examining the evidence from a 21st century perspective.
He certainly seems to have arrived at Munich rather under-equipped.
Kann ich bitte ein bisschen Licht haben?
To the extent that he had to borrow a news crew's lighting equipment to commence his examination.
Can I have some light here, please?
Of course, uppermost in his mind was the possibility of ice on the wings. So he went looking for that, and sure enough, he found it.
The wrecked aircraft was covered by a layer of snow, about 8 centimeters thick. This could be brushed aside with the hand without difficulty. Under this, there was a layer of ice, frozen firmly onto the surface of the wing. Here.
Reichel finds the only surfaces free of ice are near the engines. He assumes the entire wing was coated in ice before the crash, and that during the takeoff attempt, the propellers blew away the ice behind them. The day after the crash, investigators take a closer look at the scene. They examine the tire tracks, which extend 50 meters and right off the end of the runway.
The information from the ground marks that the aircraft never got airborne must have, in Reichel's mind, reinforced this impression that ice on the wings was responsible.
Manchester, from the moment the news came through, was a city in mourning. While millions wait anxiously for news of the seriously injured men, the hospital staff worked day and night to save them. Matt Busby was their worst problem. For 2 days he lay between life and death with one of his lungs completely deflated. Then came the welcome news: Matt was off the danger list.
6 of the 7 injured players also pull through. But the team loses one of its greatest stars.
Duncan had died. Duncan died, I think, 10 days. Yeah.
To this day, many regard Duncan Edwards as the greatest footballer the UK has ever produced. Co-pilot Kenneth Raymond also dies, having suffered a brain injury.
Full power.
James Thane is left to face a wall of questions on his own.
Well, you see, on the first takeoff, we weren't completely satisfied with the engines.
Any little bit of information that the press could get, there was another headline. It was relentless. So it must have been very difficult for him.
2 days after the crash, Reichel interviews Thane.
After the accident, we established that the starboard wing had a layer of rough ice on it. The region of the propeller slipstream was free from ice.
When I walked out of the aircraft on the first attempt, I could see the snow thawing on the wings and count the ribs of the aircraft.
What did you say was the cause of the accident?
My personal feeling is that there must have been a large quantity of snow built up at the end of the runway.
Why were you sitting in the right-hand seat?
People began to speculate even before the inquiry about the cause of the accident.
2 months after the crash, in April 1958, a German inquiry formally gets underway.
Shall I begin?
The German investigation, straight away, it seemed to be into this adversarial role of somebody being on trial and having to prove his innocence.
They knew straight away that there's something going on here. He's on the rope straight away, right?
Hans Reichel draws on witness testimony of snow on the wings and Thane's own account that he did not de-ice.
And this is something that would not go away with Reichel. It's ice, ice, ice all the way.
The temperature the afternoon of the crash hovered around 0 degrees Celsius. It wasn't cold enough for the snow to create ice.
Thane saw the water actually dripping off the leading edge. So he knew the snow was actually melting, so obviously that convinced him again that it just didn't require de-icing.
But German experts note that the Elizabethan had just descended from 25,000 feet, where the air temperature was minus 25 degrees Celsius. They conclude that snow falling on the frozen wings would have turned instantly to ice. Thane counters with the testimony,
de-icing on,
that he turned on the wing de-icing heaters on descent to Munich. That would have made the wings warmer, not colder than the air. Thane seems to have all the answers. But what he doesn't know is that Hans Reichel is about to present a controversial piece of evidence that will change everything.
Aici ai tot ce-ți trebuie pentru o expediție. Lui îi trebuie doar atât. Hazen Odell, supraviețuitorul, azi la 9 pe National Geographic.
Organizează-ți baia așa cum dorești. Acum ai dulapul pentru chiuvetă la doar 90 lei. Cu o dublă utilitate, dulapul cu oglindă costă numai 129 lei. Fiecare obiect își găsește locul în dulapul de baie cu 2 uși și 2 sertare la doar 249 lei. Lidl, ceva nou în fiecare săptămână.
Let me tell you about a girl who know. She is my baby and she lives next door. Every morning before the sun comes up, she brings my coffee in my favorite cup. That's why I know. Yes, I know. Hallelujah, I just love her so.
Puterea alintaromei ne aduce mai aproape.
Când circulă gripa sau răceala, toți din casă se pot îmbolnăvi. Dar există Nurofen, cu medicamente eficiente împotriva simptomelor de răceală și gripă pentru toată familia. Nurofen Junior pentru cei mici și Nurofen răceală și gripă pentru adulți. Acționează prompt, țintind sursa febrei și durerii. Ca să-i poți pune pe toți pe picioare, la nevoie. Nurofen și familia ta. Mai bine împreună. Acestea sunt medicamente. Citiți cu atenție prospectele.
Sute de bunătăți, dar pregătite pentru alții. Zeci de curse contra cronometru. Printre ele, oferă-ți un moment de vitalitate cu inovația Don Cafe Green Active. Conținând extract de cafea verde, te ajută la accelerarea metabolismului. Pentru mai multe momente de vitalitate, intră acum pe doncafe.ro Green Active. Momentul tău Don Cafe.
Hai, să mai facem combinații? Mi-mi place să-mi luau cu rolele.
Bine.
Viața e mai fun când faci combinații. Combo 1+1 îți dă avantaj la combinații. Doar la McDonald's.
Noul 7 Days Super Max. Croissantul super mare bogat în umplutură. Noul 7 Days Super Max cu cacao și 7 Days Super Double cu umplutură de cacao și vanilie. Noua super plăcere.
Acum,
Design cu atitudine. Mazda CX-5 cu tracțiune integrală cadou. Doping pentru păr. Dacă au probleme de cădere a părului și început de calviție, tot mai mulți bărbați aleg șamponul cu cofeină de la Alpecin. În timpul spălării părului, doza mare de cofeină din Alpecin pătrunde în foliculii firelor de păr. Doping pentru păr. Numai pentru păr. Disponibil acum în farmacii.
Hei! Astăzi vom afla o nouă mișcare Kung Fu de la maestrul Po. Descoperă artele marțiale de la noile personaje Kung Fu Panda 3. Acum în fiecare al 5-lea ou Kinder Surprise. Ți-am stârnit curiozitatea?
Piața drogurilor se bazează pe marfă. De aceea, noi i-am luat urmă. Sigur, afacerea e în gangul din spate. Uneori însă, mai aproape de tine decât ți-ai închipuit. Cerere din plin. Așa că merge treaba. Droguri SRL, ultimul sezon. În fiecare vineri la 10 pe National Geographic Channel.
Government inquiry of the Munich disaster takes a decisive turn with the introduction of a casual snapshot.
This was potentially a smoking gun because at first glance looking at the photograph it appeared to show a white area on the top of the wings, which certainly was interpreted as being a layer of snow or ice.
Every other aircraft that left Munich that day was de-iced, but not the Elizabethan. For investigator Hans Reichel, the crew's failure to de-ice is the leading cause of the accident.
Apart from this icing, I could find nothing which might have been a cause for the accident or to have contributed to it.
As for the house at the end of the runway,
clearly it was an issue because the aircraft struck it.
The impact and explosion did make the accident more deadly. But German authorities find that according to regulations, the house was a proper distance from the airport. Finally, investigators consider whether the engine boosting problem was a possible cause.
Port is off the top.
The theory is quickly dismissed.
The boost issue had nothing to do with the accident. One of the engines was actually carrying a crude form of flight recorder which indicated that during the run the engines were certainly delivering enough power to get the aircraft airborne.
Während des knapp zweistündigen Aufenthalts in München,
in March 1959, a year after the tragedy of Munich, the German government releases its official report. It lays full blame for the accident at the feet of Captain James Thane.
Ice. Ice on the wings, which they say was there before the accident. Simple.
The German investigation also suggests that by agreeing to switch seats, Captain Thane may have created confusion over which pilot was in charge.
And they said Captain Thane, he's the one responsible for the deaths of 23 people and the decimating the Manchester United football team. That is one hell of a burden to take on.
I think in terms of the press, obviously they like to have somebody that they can pin something on, and to that extent they saw him as a little bit of a villain.
He was definitely badly treated. He was made the scapegoat.
A year after the crash, James Thane's reputation is in tatters. The former RAF officer and accomplished commercial pilot is now a full-time farmer. The disaster at Munich haunts him constantly.
I can remember Mum and Dad sitting up for all hours of the night talking about this because Dad was convinced that there had been some external force that had affected the takeoff run.
Thane is certain that ice on the wings did not cause the crash. He decides to launch his own investigation.
Dad was a man of great integrity and fortitude, and he was determined that he would make sure that he found the cause of the accident.
But in 1959, There are almost no forensic tools at his disposal.
For a start, of course, an aircraft of that size would have the benefit of a flight data recorder, a black box flight recorder, and a cockpit voice recorder. And if we could have that information from the 1958 Munich accident, there would be absolutely no doubt about the cause.
V1. The plane reached 117 knots, but then slowed dramatically. Ice on the wings can't explain that sudden loss of speed. But something else can. Something Thane sees as the real cause of the crash. Slush on the runway.
So imagine you're driving on a dry road during the winter and you suddenly enter an area of slush.
Canadian aviation expert Terry Townsend specializes in the study of runway contamination.
Immediately you're going to notice resistance on the vehicle from the slush, and the same thing happens on the aircraft.
Thane believes other planes didn't have slush problems that day because they took off on the first 2/3 of the runway. Since the Elizabethan accelerated more slowly to compensate for the boost pressure problem, it rolled further into the unused part of the runway with deep slush.
It takes more power to overcome that slush.
Thane learns that 9 years earlier, a Trans-Canada Airlines plane failed to take off on a slushy Vancouver runway.
They did some research and found that as little as 5 centimeters of slush could really adversely affect the aircraft's ability to reach takeoff speed.
The Canadian government issued a letter of warning to all airlines. Do not attempt takeoff in more than 5 centimeters of slush.
It was sent to BEA, but for some reason, best known to themselves, they did not take any action on it and filed it away for future reference.
The German investigators have dismissed slush as a possible cause, insisting it was ice on the wings. But through his research, Captain Thane uncovers a shocking omission.
We quite fortuitously came across a witness who had made an inspection of the wreckage immediately after the accident.
Karl-Heinz Seffer was among the first at the scene, climbing up on the wing to help pull co-pilot Kenneth Raymond from the wreckage. He was later interviewed by investigators.
Ich kletterte über den rechten Flügel hinunter. Mir fiel kein Eis am Rumpf oder am Flügel auf. Ich trug Gummistiefel. Da war kein Eis, sonst wäre ich ausgerutscht.
But when this report was read out to the first German Commission, only part of it was read out. That part which included the evidence that he couldn't find any ice was left out.
All this was set up, it was all stage managed, you know, if Thane was going to be made a scapegoat, it was going to be ice on the wing, it wasn't going to be runway contamination.
That's in spite of eyewitness accounts from the air traffic controllers, which also supported the slush theory.
Beeline 609, your clearance expires at 3:1. Time now is 3:0.
The most crucial eyewitnesses saw the aircraft start the takeoff run as normal. About halfway down the runway, they saw the nose lift, which would be standard procedure. But then, unusually, they saw it go back down onto the runway, which of course should not happen.
This crucial eyewitness evidence was also omitted at the inquiry.
It's quite notable that the air traffic controllers that were called as witnesses were the trainee ones, and that the qualified ones weren't called.
The only person to testify about slush on the runway was the Munich airport manager. He said he inspected the runway and found the slush was less than a centimeter deep.
Slush can be difficult to measure because it can vary significantly in height across the runway. The slush can be 1 centimeter high in one place and it can be 10 centimeters high in another. So a number of samples have to be taken in order to get a reasonable average.
Also in question is Reichel's conclusion about ice on the wings. that it must have been there before takeoff, since the only areas without ice were behind the propellers where it blew off. A scientific challenge to this view comes from a most unlikely source. Captain Thane's wife, Ruby.
She was a remarkable lady, being one of the first women to get a first-class honours degree from Bristol in chemistry, physics and maths.
A trained chemist, Ruby Thane points to the massive amount of fire-extinguishing chemicals sprayed on the burning wreckage.
Actually thought about this very carefully, and she obtained a sample of fire extinguisher powder, which turned out to be sodium bicarbonate, which is common baking powder. So she would go out and sprinkle it on the metal car, thinking it might simulate an aircraft wing, and found that if that mixed with snow and water, that this solution would freeze at a lower temperature than that was recorded at Munich that night.
Firemen trained their hoses mainly on the engines. Ruby's experiment could explain why ice did not accumulate in those areas, but did build up on the rest of the wing in the hours after the crash. With new eyewitness testimony and compelling scientific evidence, another side of the story begins to emerge.
If it's ice on the wings, it's the captain's fault. He is to blame.
V1.
Of course, if it's slush on the runway, then really it's the airport to blame.
Thane submits the new evidence to the German authorities, but they refuse to reopen the investigation.
It's nonsense.
In 1961, BEA officially fires Thane, primarily for violating the company's policy against pilots switching seats.
Well, they sacked him, and he was devastated by this, for something which was effectively a little company regulation, but other people did that as well.
BEA, obviously, if you think about it, did not want a pilot like that on the flight deck. As they're about to take off, this is your captain speaking, Captain Thane, I'm the one responsible for 23 deaths at Munich in 1958, so no airline wants that.
A conviction of convenience. It didn't matter who they hung out to dry, and he was hung out to dry.
The loss of his job makes Thane more determined than ever to clear his name. He writes letter after letter to both the British and German governments, urging them to reopen the investigation. In 1965, those efforts pay off. German authorities agree to review the investigation of the Munich disaster.
Initially, with the second German inquiry, it was felt that, yes, there could be a glimmer of hope.
That hope has been stirred by some new research.
Tests into slush carried out at Bidden.
Britain's Royal Aircraft Establishment has conducted slush tests on the Elizabethan aircraft.
Basically, they flooded a runway to varying depths and simulated a takeoff run using an Ambassador aircraft. The results of these tests were quite alarming.
In run after run, the plane decelerates from 117 to about 105 knots. The same loss of speed reported by Thane.
We're hoping that when the Germans have considered, if they consider all the relevant evidence, we shall get them to reach the conclusion that the aircraft accident was due to slush on the runway and not ice on the wings.
But at the two-day hearing, Reichel is not swayed by the new evidence. Instead of clearing Thane, he condemns him further, saying that by switching seats, the captain actually made things worse.
The differing assessment of the situation by the two pilots probably increased the severity of the accident.
Christ, we're not going to make it.
As an investigator these days, I can see no technical reason why that should have contributed to the accident.
The damning findings of the German Review Commission are a crushing blow to Thane.
The British government knew, the airline knew, Thane certainly knew it had been set up, but nothing was done.
But in a strange twist, he's about to get one last chance, thanks to Britain's most powerful politician.
Martori de necrezut la accidente să-ți rupă inima. Dezastre în aer, serie nouă, în fiecare joi la 9 pe National Geographic.
Fiind profesor, privesc lumea în mod diferit. Poate nu realizați, dar avem mușchi inclusiv la nivelul capului. Aici, când aceștia devin tensionați, pot provoca majoritatea durerilor de cap.
Nurofen Express Forte acționează asupra mușchilor tensionați pentru a calma rapid durerea de cap. Țintește sursa majorității durerilor de cap cu Nurofen Express Forte. Acesta este un medicament. Citiți cu atenție prospectul.
Descoperă noul Bergambir Ale, o rețetă originală cu drojdie ale de fermentație superioară. Observă-i culoarea specială și lasă-te învăluit de aroma perfect echilibrată, corpul plin și gustul deosebit. În ediție limitată, prietenii știu de ce.
Cum ar fi să combinăm și noi lucruri ca la Mac?
Mi-e place să mă distrez.
Mie-mi plac filmele de dragoste.
Draga mea, ești minunată.
Dragul meu, ce să zic? Mersi frumos!
Viața e mai fun când faci combinații. Combo 1+1 îți dă avantaj la combinații. Doar la McDonald's.
Ce ne pregătește azi, maestre? Super chipsuri după super rețeta CEO. Ia uimește-ne. Tăiați la exact 1,3 mm și prăjiți în ulei pur de floarea soarelui. Hai să lăsăm pe aia care știu să facă chipsuri. Mari, crocante și gustoase.
CEO știe să facă super chipsuri, voi știți să le super savurați.
N-am fost eu în formă azi, că mi-eșeau și mie.
Începem. Punga ridicată și ține ritmul. Hai, hai, hai. Cu rază largă de acțiune. Și bine te-am luat! Ca să fiți în formă de dimineața până seara, luați în fiecare zi Eurovita Multivital Asset.
Complexul de vitamine și minerale cu eliberare prelungită îți asigură un tonus excelent pe tot parcursul zilei. Alege Eurovita Multivital AZ, doza zilnică de vitalitate. Acesta este un supliment alimentar. Citiți cu atenție prospectul sau informațiile de pe ambalaj.
Oare dacă aștept spațiul oreo, aș vedea biscuiții cu un nou jumire câștigător spre New York sau alte premii de ador. Hai pe site în lumea oreo.
Gesturile mici duc la dragostea mare. Ia o cutie de I Love Milka și oferă momente de tandrețe. Poți câștiga unul din premiile oferite instant, numai bune de a face gesturi mici persoanelor dragi.
Excilor pătrunde complet în unghie, oprește dezvoltarea ciupercii și te ajută să previi răspândirea ei, simplu, modern, fără răzuirea unghiei. Excilor.
Dear King, in return for your staggering daughter, I hereby present you with 200 kilograms of purest African gold, 50 kilograms of uncut Belgian diamonds, 50 pigs, 50 geese, 50 slaves, one highly intelligent camel, and a handful of mansions in the northern estate.
Dear King, I present to you bake rolls. Thin slices of bread, double baked in the oven, and you can have it with salt, garlic, tomato and olive.
Pizza?
And pizza.
Good. Ich give my daughter to you.
Ce-ți dorești de la multivitaminele tale? Ea are nevoie de mai mult fier și acid folic. El are nevoie de mai multă vitamina B. Pentru nevoi diferite, ia-ți doza zilnică de beneficii cu Centrum pentru bărbați și Centrum pentru femei, cu doze optimizate de vitamine și minerale pentru el și pentru ea. Iar dacă ai peste 50 de ani, încearcă noile Centrum Silver pentru bărbați și femei. Acesta este un supliment alimentar cu multivitamine și minerale. Citiți cu atenție prospectul.
Atenție! Avem feline mari. Din nou. Luna feline. În fiecare seară la 7 pe Nat Geo Wild.
Expectant fans packed the stands to see great football. The Busby Babes were raring to go.
In 1967, Harold Wilson is Prime Minister of the UK. After attending a Manchester United game, he makes a comment that sets off a media frenzy. He says he believes James Thane was a victim of injustice.
Became another headline, the fight goes on.
Harold Wilson, he knew enough that Thane was innocent, and he really took it on. It was debated in the House of Commons, and then it went ahead, and this was the most thorough inquiry yet.
In 1968, British investigators conduct a study to determine whether slush or wing ice caused the Munich disaster. Their findings immediately call into question the accuracy of the two German reports. Photographic analysis shows that the white on the wings is not snow. It was merely light reflecting off a wet surface.
A new picture was taken from the original negative, which showed clearly that the markings on the aircraft, so there couldn't have been ice.
As well, 3 separate experts determined that the amount of ice Reichel found on the wings, 5 millimeters, would not have been enough to prevent takeoff.
I don't see how a layer of ice, even 5 millimeters thick, could account for a deceleration of the aircraft.
Then the British inquiry takes a dramatic turn when a star witness appears, Reinhard Meyer, a pilot who was first on the scene of the crash.
Ich ging hin und untersuchte den Flügel des Flugzeugwracks und bemerkte nichts in der Art von Frost oder angefrorenen Ablagerungen, nur schmelzenden Schnee.
It turned out when he was called to give evidence, he said, well, I spoke to Reichel personally, face to face, and told him what had happened, that I'd gone to the aircraft, I'd looked for ice immediately after, within minutes of the crash, and I found no ice, just melting snow only. And that was it, so everyone was astonished at this.
Reichel has no explanation for the glaring omission.
I think he found it very difficult to back down and say, actually, I was wrong.
Slush on the runway is going to be the German airport authorities' fault, and they're not going to accept that.
In March 1969,
good news,
11 years after the crash,
finally,
the British government formally clears James Thane.
Well, of course, my family are very pleased indeed.
Well, he knew that obviously this was the right findings, and he was very pleased and happy because in this country he'd been exonerated.
But BEA does not give him his job back. Captain Thane never flies again. In Germany, Hans Reichel and the aviation authorities never exonerate him.
I think there was a huge amount of stress and strain and tension, and he died a young man. He was 54.
At Munich, there were 23 victims, and Captain Thane was the 24th.
Took the ball into mid.
10 years after the accident that killed 8 of its players, Manchester United becomes the first English team to win the European Cup.
At last, Matt Busby, the maestro of Manchester United, had groomed a team great enough to beat Europe's best.
A cup they might have won in 1958, if not for an aviation disaster that devastated the finest team of players Britain had ever assembled. Harry Gregg continued playing for Manchester United until 1967. Now in his 70s, he dwells only on the fond memories.
I don't think about the accident. I think about what I was part of. A team of wonderful young spirited players, great journalists, great staff. Everything was good about it.
Captain Thane's legacy is modern aviation's improved understanding of the deadly effects of slush.
The problem is tackled now, and I would suggest it was probably a direct result of the Munich accident. Airport authorities approached the problem very, very differently.
By what he did, forcing this issue, he's probably saved countless lives and prevented more than one Munich in that particular time. So, in that sense, he's to be admired for what he did in those 11 years.
Mum was quoted as saying, "A man with greater integrity I will never know." But he also left an inscription for me in a book, which is the difference between the impossible and the possible is merely a measure of man's determination.